Envision it: turkeys, broiling, chuckling, consumes the space family accumulated close for these special seasons. It should be a period of delight, of making recollections that endure forever. Yet, for the Jones family, one Thanksgiving in 2009, those recollections would take a stunning turn. They arranged a tomfoolery experience, not realizing it would prompt unfathomable murkiness and grievous misfortune. This is the narrative of the Nutty Clay Cave misfortune, a story of investigation turned out badly, of courage tried, and a sign of the secret risks that hide underneath them. Surface: John Jones, energetic for family fun, joined the endeavor while he hadn't investigated this specific cavern before. John and his sibling Josh had a background marked by collapsing different Utah caves during their childhood. In spite of his experience, Jones' cavern investigations had assumed a lower priority lately because of the requests of marriage, parenthood, and his quest for a physician's certification at the College of Virginia. With the Thanksgiving break giving a rest chomp, John anticipated unwinding with his family during a time of climbing and investigating at Nutty Clay Cave, with its different and enthralling segments, offered wayfarers a scope of encounters. The labyrinth room, portrayed by openings and passages around significant rocks, gave a captivating organization to explore. Another prominent region was the slide, a huge incline segment where the whole room slanted at a 45-point. The birth waterway, with its tight and contracting section, represented an impressive test. Comparatively, the aorta slither tried globetrotter abilities with its hard-to-pass burrows. Nutty Clay had as of late resumed to the general population to address the dangers. Another license framework was executed, requiring 2 experienced cavers for each gathering. Little did the Jones family had any idea that their vacation experience would take an overwhelming go because of the unforgiving idea of the cavern on the Tuesday prior to Thanksgiving. In 2009, Josh got a license for a gathering of 11 loved ones, including John, who was energetic for a daring day with his friends and family, abandoning his pregnant spouse Emily and their 1-year-old girl Lizzie for a loosening up night. John, alongside his sibling Josh, wandered into the really open cavern segments, looking for a seriously difficult encounter. They set off on a mission to investigate the birth waterway, a famous tight section with an especially contracting press close to the end, notwithstanding the potential frenzy initiating nature. Both experienced cavers took on the test, exploring through a little passage that undulated all over the course of the following 10 FD. They experienced offshoots of rocks and difficult situations requiring perplexing spots of the body to advance. Named the wine tool, this region requested little and adaptable cavers to move through its frenzy, prompting distortions. Past the wine tool, the entry calculated up for one more 5 FT prior to turning down over a stone edge with a sharp 90 curve to the left. Considering past difficulties, they reviewed the story of Brock Clark, a 16-year-old kid who got wedged in the wine tool segment 5 years sooner, requiring 14 hours of salvage endeavors. JN wound up in the specific place where Brock had battled, understanding that at 6 F tall and 200 lb pivoting in this bound space was impossible. Determined, he pushed forward, crushing over the edge region that no other person had crossed before. The main horrid slip-up he did was going head first, something that master cavers emphatically prescribe not to do while entering obscure segments and in strange area. John stayed created, persuaded that an initial lay ahead. Accepting he was exploring the birth trench, he pushed through close zones, at last sliding head first in a descending point, despite the fact that he was unable to pivot. John, in his 12 in high space, pushed forward, exploring the unexplored world earnestly and poised as gravity constantly pulled John's body. Descending, his solidarity faded, and he critically shouted to his sibling Josh, prompting Josh not to follow him yet, to withdraw. They thought on the best strategy, understanding that endeavoring to push ahead and pivot was their most practical choice. John imploding onto his shoulders, and go to take action to get away from this problematic vertical situation. In the faint light of his headlamp, he recognized an opening in the floor ahead, touching off a gleam of trust that they could chuckle about this misfortune over Thanksgiving supper. Decided he made a slight turn and headed towards the opening. The exact conditions that drove John into this passage opening stayed obscure. It was estimated that he could have slipped, hit his head, and became wedged in the restricted space. On the other hand, it was viewed as that he investigated the opening, yet misinterpreted it as an opening as opposed to an impasse. Notwithstanding, John ended up wedged almost totally topsy-turvy at a 70 point in a limited opening. Only 18 in by 10, in John's endeavors to propel himself upwards from this limiting opening, demonstrated depleting his arms, was stuck. One collapsed under his chest, and the other caught close by on a stone stressing against the walls. He understood that his endeavors were medieval. His calves and the arms and feet were free in the entry above. However, his legs were wedged on the tightest side of the opening, just 8 in wide. Shouting for Josh. Again, Jones' bothered cries signaled the seriousness of his quandary. Josh, getting back to the restricted space and navigating the wine toolway feet previously, was met with a disturbing sight. In a progression of medieval endeavors, Josh attempted to grasp and pull John up, while John pushed from his end. Depleted and baffled, the siblings recognized the weightiness of the circumstance. Acknowledging proficient assistance was basic as the hours passed and gravity fixed its hold on Jones' depleted body. John, with his shallow breaths, attempted to remain mentally collected, while proficient assistance showed up. The main cavern hero, Sui Matar, explored through the wine tool region effortlessly because of her 5'3" in height ropes attached to her lower legs as a safeguard. She kept an eye on Jones' prosperity and guaranteed him that they were attempting to free him. Susie fastidiously tied webbing lashes around Jones' legs, taking care of them back to the pit where the passage started. Various endeavors were made to pull on the ropes and influence John back up and out of the fissure anyway. The contact on the ropes demonstrated overpowering, leaving John actually stuck without the utilization of his arms for help. In the wake of investigating different choices and taking into account forceful methodologies, the choice was reached to utilize a pulley framework to lift John up and out, having effectively involved a pulley framework experiencing the same thing 5 years earlier. With Brock Clark, the heroes realized it was a reasonable system anyway. The difficult area made the errand complex. Each piece of gear must be painstakingly moved from the entry, requiring almost an hour to arrive at the opposite side of the wine tool. The passage's tight aspects permitted just more modest power devices to be completed in, and just a single individual, ideally little or Y, could successfully help at a time. In spite of these difficulties, the heroes worked determinedly to introduce every pulley, a tedious cycle in obscurity. Cave JN, who is serious areas of strength, for a track down solace in imploring and singing, hanging topsy-turvy all night, negatively affected his body. Worked to be topsy-turvy for a really long time. The bloodstream, which regularly goes down from the heart, battled against gravity. This made liquid development in Jones' lungs, making it difficult for him to inhale. His muscles, not used to this position, got truly worn out. Jones' breathing eased back, and he turned out to be noticeably invested during this difficult energy. A wired telecom framework was carried down to Jones' area, permitting his significant other to talk with him, empowering him to hold tight and remain dedicated. She accepted Jones' confirmations that he would, before long, be brought together with her. It was only after 4:00 p.m. the following day that the pulley were at last set up to endeavor John's extraction. Ryan's shirts inside the passage helped move John, whose body had subsided, into the limited side of the opening. With each hurl from the group outside, John moved inch by inch up and into a more healthy place. At this point, Jones' legs were in horrifying torment, having persevered through long stretches of strain from the tied rope. Each pull provoked John to require a stop. His nerves hip delicate right now. They stopped to give John a second to collect himself, then attempted once more. It was by all accounts working. John was at last being pulled up in the clear, raised enough for Ryan to visually connect with him. They passed down a cylinder for him to drink Gatorade. The work was carefully sluggish, and depletion lingered over undeniably elaborate. Ryan crushed in a passage, only 12 in high, with his head close to John's legs, worked steadily to move him out of the tight 10 in fissure. While progress was being made in lifting him up, they experienced another test. John's legs were stirring things up around town roof, above the passage, and turning them into the entry demonstrated unimaginable. Following 19 hours topsy-turvy, without his assistance to carefully twist his knees to the side, the heroes were considering the uncommon proportion of breaking his legs to work with his return into the entry. There was just no time to spare for John, and a basic choice should have been made in an unexpected and difficult second. Ryan shut down. After recapturing cognizance, he ended up draining vigorously and confounded. The rope holding the pulley to regular curve segment in the cavern had broken, whipping the carabiner and pulley straight forwardly into Ryan's face. He endured harm to his face, lip and tongue, alongside a blackout. The desperation to escape the cavern immediately set in. John was back where he began, totally wedged in the passage, with the course to his arms cut off and his legs lethargic. This sad occurrence denoted the start of the end for John Jones. After Ryan was looked at and shipped off the clinic, Dave had his spot in the entry. Restoring the pulley lines required an hour, and Dave endeavored to tie a rope around Jones' body anyway. He couldn't get the rope past Jones' wedged middle. All through Dave's presence, John stayed lethargic. The whole effort relied upon Jones' dynamic cooperation for an effective salvage, and without it, the circumstance turned out to be progressively desperate. Understanding the weightiness of the circumstance, Dave propelled himself back into the 12 in burrow. Depleted Brandon Coles had his spot, getting the telecom framework to permit Jones' family to speak with him, in spite of Emily's looks of adoration and consolation for John to enjoy some time off and rest. Brandon could see what she couldn't. John was at this point not responsive, and no indications of something going on under the surface could be heard. Over the past a few hours, the salvage group assembled in the pit region inside the cavern, examining the solemn reality. It was resolved that a clinical expert expected to affirm John's passing, a paramedic, was sent into the tight segment, and at 11:56 on Wednesday, November 25, the John Jones was articulated dead, regardless of the vigorous endeavors of the salvage groups laboring for 24 hours straight. John couldn't be liberated because of his topsy-turvy position. The clock was ticking and time ran out. John endured a remarkable 27 hours in a reverse position, quite a bit longer than whatever was anticipated as conceivable. The 6 salvage personnel who arrived at John in that rough jail were genuinely chivalrous. They readily positioned themselves in a part of the cavern with many realized takes a chance, with showed magnanimity in their endeavors, kept a quiet disposition, and never abandoned an apparently unimaginable salvage. Subsequent to understanding that recuperating the body was unimaginable, John was passed on to rest in the Ed's push part of the Nutty Clay Cave forever. The whole cavern framework was deterred with concrete at absolutely no point ever to be investigated. In the future, a plaque was put there to recognize the existence of John Jones.